Good morning, everyone. So good to see you here for our second Climate Week Axios House at the Vanderbilt. It's wonderful to be with all of you. I have the great pleasure of moderating our View from the Top segment with our sponsor, Constellation. I'd like to please introduce to the stage Executive Vice President and Chief Legal and Policy Officer of Constellation, David Dardis. Hi.
How are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thanks for being with us.
Of course.
I know you're taking a train up from Baltimore to see us, to make this conversation happen. Thank you so much for being part of Axios House this year.
Yeah, great to be here.
So as a journalist, the big news last year, I mean, it was earth-shattering, and it's almost been about a year since that news broke. And for those who do not remember what I'm talking about, the one-year anniversary of Constellation's announcement to restart 3 Mile Island, Unit 1, Pennsylvania, in this very landmark deal with Microsoft. In June, you also just announced a $16.4 billion agreement to acquire Calpine. What's changed in the last 24 months that really has led us to this moment, this new moment, to talk seriously about new nuclear?
Yeah, well, thanks. And Saturday was actually the one-year anniversary of our announcement of Crane, and how exciting is that? Over 800 megawatts coming online. We're going to be online in 2027, a year earlier than originally announced. So that's really awesome for the company. But what's changed for us and in our perspective and outlook on new nuclear, really it's been three things. I think it's policy, I think it's scale for us. You mentioned Calpine, and it's customers. As it relates to policy, you know, we fought hard to preserve the nuclear production tax credit because we believe new nuclear won't happen without existing nuclear. And getting that preserved for existing nuclear was just so critical for the existing nuclear fleet in the United States. And you know, it's the one tax provision for clean energy supported by both Republicans and Democrats. It was passed unanimously in the Inflation Reduction Act, and it was passed by Democrats, and it was passed unanimously by Republicans under the big beautiful bill. So that's exciting. And as it relates to scale for us, one of the reasons we acquired Calpine was to get to scale. We are currently the largest nuclear owner-operator in the U.S. We're soon going to be the largest natural gas producer and geothermal producer in the U.S. So, and when this transaction is done, we are going to be the largest publicly traded electricity producer in the world. And that footprint and that scale lets us think about leaning into nuclear and the investments necessary there. And then finally, most importantly, and sorry to go on here, but most importantly, customers. Our customers are coming to us and saying we need more of all of it and we need it clean. And nuclear is a very obvious answer for us. And so we're working with customers, figuring out how to make this work from a financial perspective and from a development perspective.
I think that breakdown across those three is important. So I think it was wonderful you went in depth. I want to, though, underscore what you said. Without existing nuclear, new nuclear is not going to happen. So what policy or even market changes matter most right now to protect what's in place?
Yeah, and as I mentioned, it was not clear that there was going to be commitment by the policymakers for existing nuclear not too long ago. It wasn't that long ago that we were shutting down nuclear power plants prematurely. I think 13 different nuclear reactors have shut down prematurely, including TMI, now Crane, and that should never have happened. And that was because the policymakers didn't fully appreciate the value that nuclear brings to the grid and to customers. And our view is that you're never going to get the new nuclear renaissance happening without existing nuclear. Just the technology, the workforce, the access to the sites in which we're located, you're going to put new nuclear first at existing nuclear. We've got the interconnection, we've got the water, we have the transportation. So that's where we think it's going to happen. And protecting the existing fleet was so important, and Section 45U is the nuclear production tax credit, and that's going to be in place for 10 years, and it really gives a long runway for existing nuclear.
I know you talked about customers. I mean, we've been talking all week about how there's demand for energy, demand for clean energy, but that doesn't automatically guarantee success for Constellation on that level. So what would success look like? How would you characterize success for Constellation for new nuclear?
Yeah, I think success is, make up a number, 10 gigawatts of new nuclear in the next 5 to 10 years, 10 years I would say. If we get 10 gigawatts online in the next 10 years, that would be a raging success for new nuclear from my perspective. I think the other thing that would be a success is we've narrowed the technologies down to 2, 3 different technologies, and you get to nth of a kind. So you're building 3, 4, 5 different, different machines of 2 or 3 different technologies, and that's success. Like nuclear, it's not preordained that nuclear is going to win. We believe it will, but there's other, we're invested in Calpine because we think carbon capture sequestration is a possibility. We also think firming renewables with storage is another solution. But nuclear looks pretty good against those technologies from a cost perspective if you look at them in that way.
And that was my follow-up. Like, why does it even matter for new nuclear to win?
Well, we just need a lot more of what we currently have, and nuclear has proven to be the most durable source of electricity on the grid. It really is the backbone of the grid. And if you think about also this new demand coming on the system, which are these hyperscalers and AI, you look at the load profile of that technology, nuclear fits very well with that technology. It requires some base load, firm power, and nuclear is a great match for that rising demand.
So you talked earlier about policy and customers and scale. One thing we haven't touched upon yet is public perception. There's still a gap. In your mind, what is still the biggest gap in public understanding of nuclear?
Well, I think the polling is clear that now more than ever nuclear is on a rise in terms of public perception. So I think we're doing really great, and I think I can't walk around town without people talking to me who don't even know that I happen to work for the largest nuclear owner operator in the United States about the need for more. But there are still some misperceptions about fuel waste and safety. The track record of nuclear, however, proves that nuclear has been the safest form of electricity in this country's history, if you just look at the track record. And if you talk about waste, we're the only industry and producer of electricity that knows where every gram of waste ever produced from the fleet is located. And you could put all of the nuclear waste in one large Costco from the entire civil nuclear program's history. It's pretty remarkable.
Why do you think the misperception still exists?
I just think that there's this lack of education, and we haven't done a good job in the industry. We've shied away from talking about these things because, nuclear waste, oh my gosh, it's a scary word. But it's not scary. I started in the last 5, 10 years, started having that conversation, and the industry's just done a poor job.
You had mentioned what success would mean in your terms, 10 gigawatts in 10 years. When journalists are out there looking at demand projections, they're quite popping and sometimes our jaws drop. One particular one I'll just cite, a 2024 Department of Energy report saying that electricity use driven by power-hungry AI data centers could consume as much as 12% of total U.S. electricity use by 2028. You and I were talking about math a little bit before we got on stage today. Your math is a little bit different. What is your forecast, and what does that imply for the pace of new nuclear and also near-term prices?
Yeah, this is a really important conversation and question because, unless you've appropriately identified the challenge, you can't really figure out the solution. And I think there's a lot of different interests who have incentives for very high demand forecasts and load projections. If you look at the math, and look, there's no question that demand is growing, right? No question. But the pace at which it grows and the scale is super important for whether or not we can keep up as an industry, and I think we can. And here, let me share a couple numbers with you. In PJM, it's the largest grid system in the East Coast, in the United States actually, is projecting, the last load forecast came out, said by 2030, they're planning to add 60 gigawatts of additional load. Texas is projecting 70 gigawatts of additional load by 2030. It's 130 gigawatts. Let me give you some more math. We believe, the numbers are pretty clear. A 1 gigawatt data center costs about $35 billion to construct. Half of that's NVIDIA chips, the rest is balance of plant. So, okay, that's $35 billion. I just used my AI machine back there and Googled the total budget of the 4 largest hyperscalers in the world. Their annual CapEx budget globally combined is about $350 billion. So if you do the math, you get maybe 10 gigawatts a year. globally. So I just don't see how you get to 130 gigawatts in just 2 parts of the country, let alone the rest of the country. So the math just doesn't add up. We've got triple, quadruple forecasting. We've got to rationalize that so we figure out what the right public policy is and where the right investment should happen.
Well, I hope we come back in 10 years and check everyone's math. That would be good. All of you, thank you for being here. David, thank you for joining us and for making today possible.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome, good conversation.